Hi, my name is Kunal, and I'll be talking about parallel repetition for the GHG game. This is joint work with Uma Girish, Justin Holmgren, Ran Raz, and Bejan. I'll start by talking about multiplayer games. A K-player game G consists of a verifier and K players, which we denote by P1, P2, and so on up till Pk. The game starts by the verifier sampling K questions x1, x2, and so on up till xk from a known distribution mu. And then the verifier gives x1 to the player p1, x2 to the player p2, and so on up till xk to the player pk. In return, the player p1 answers y1 to the verifier, the player p2 answers y2, and so on up till the player pk answers yk. After this, the verifier evaluates a joint predicate, which we denote by v, on the questions x1 up till xk and the answers y1 up till yk. And we say that the players win if this joint predicate evaluates to 1. The value of the game G uh, is said to be the maximum winning probability over all the strategies of the players, whereby the strategies we mean that the functions the player use to transform their inputs into their output. So, for example, the function that maps x1 to y1 for player 1, x2 to y2 for player 2, and so on up till xk to yk for player k. A very natural operation is to consider the n-fold repetition of the game G, which we denote by G to the n. Now, again, we have k players, p1 up till pk, and the verifier. And this game begins by the verifier sampling n copies of the k questions independently. So we denote these questions by x1 up till xk with the superscript I, where I varies from 1 and up till n. And the verifier gives all copies of the first question to the player 1, which is x1 with superscript 1, so on up till x1 with superscript n, and all copies of the question 2 to player 2, and so on. And in return, the first player answers y1 for all of the copies of the game. So the first player will answer y1 with superscript 1, and so on up till y1 with superscript n. And we say that the players win this repeated game if they win all of the n coordinates. That is, for each I in n, the predicate v evaluates to 1 on x1 up till xk and y1 up till yk with superscript I. And the value of this repeated game g to the n is denoted by val g to the n. Note that we allow the players to correlate their answers among different copies of the game. So for example, if we consider the first player, the answer y1j for some j can depend on all of x1 with superscript 1 up till x1 with superscript n, and it does not necessarily depend only on x1 with superscript j. And this will turn out to be important as we'll see later. Okay, so the obvious question to ask is what can we say about the value of g to the n in terms of the value of g? It is easy to see that the value of g to the n is at least the value of g raised to the power n, and the players can achieve this by just playing optimally in each coordinate. And on first glance, it seems that clearly this should be optimal, and that the value of the game g to the n must equal the value of g raised to the power n. For it seems that the players should not be able to do anything better than just playing optimally in each of the n coordinates. But this turns out to be false, and there exist games such that the value of g to the n is much larger than the value of g raised to the n, and this much larger can be even exponentially larger. Okay, so what do we know about parallel repetition? First, I'll consider only the case of two-player games. For two-player games, it was proven in the 90s by Raz that if the value of the game g is less than 1, then the value of g to the n goes down exponentially in n. We even know tighter bounds when the initial game has small value. What we mean by this is that if the initial game has some value v, then we can prove bounds of the form v to the n for the value of the repeated game. I will not be going into details about this here. Parallel repetition has found many applications in diverse areas. For example, in PCPs and hardness of approximation, in the geometry of forms, in quantum information, and in communication complexity, and many more. Next, I'll be talking about the general multiplayer case. It was proven by Verbitsky in 96 that if the value of the game g is less than 1, then as n tends to infinity, the value of g to the n goes down to 0. And the bounds here turn out to be something like 1 over alpha of n, where alpha denotes an inverse Ackermann function. So this is a very slow decaying bound. Dinur, Harsha, Venkat, and Yuen, essentially using the techniques used for two-player parallel repetition, recently proved an exponential decay, but only for a very special class of multiplayer games, which they call as expanding games. Okay, so why should we be interested in proving parallel repetition theorems for multiplayer games? It was recently proved that a strong enough parallel repetition theorem for a special class of multiplayer games would imply superlinear lower bounds for Turing machines in the non-uniform model. And also, it seems that the reasons why our current techniques fail for proving direct sum and direct product theorems in number and four-head communication complexity are very similar to the reasons why our techniques fail for proving parallel repetition for multiplayer games. So progress on parallel repetition might lead to progress in lower bounds in number on four-head communication complexity. Next, I'll talk about the GHZ game. The GHZ game is a three-player game in which the questions to the three players are all bits, and these bits satisfy the property that the XOR of the three bits is 0. So the verifier samples uniformly from the set of all x, y, z in F2 cube such that their sum is 0, and the three players are given x, y, and z respectively. In return, the players answer back bits A, B, and C each in F2, and the win condition is the following. So we say that the players win if the OR of X, Y, and Z equals the XOR of A, B, and C. It is an easy exercise to show that the value of the GHZ game equals 3 over 4. Interestingly, one can also show that if the players are allowed to share an entangled quantum state, then they can win with probability 1. And this has also been used to test quantum entanglement. I would also like to add that the specifics of the win condition and the size of the answer sets will not be relevant to us. So our results will hold for any answer sets and any win conditions, and we'll only rely on the fact that the value of the initial game is less than 1 and that the questions were drawn from this particular distribution. Okay, so why should we be interested in the GHZ game? Dinur, Harsha, Venkat, and Yuen write that we believe that the strong correlations present in the GHZ question distribution represent the hardest instance of the multiplier parallel repetition problem. And so, studying the GHZ problem might lead to more progress on the general question of parallel repetition. And they also conjecture that the value of the n-fold GHZ game decays exponentially in n, so that there exists a constant beta greater than 0, such that for every natural number n, the value of GHZ to the n is at most 2 to the minus beta times n. Okay, so next I'll state our results for the GHZ game. So recall that the GHZ question set is the set of all x, y, z in F2 cube such that x plus y plus z is 0. And we prove the following theorem. Let G be any game such that its query distribution has support Q and the value of the game G is less than 1. Then we show that there is some constant C depending on the game such that the value of the n-fold GHZ game is at most n to the minus C. In particular, this also shows an inverse polynomial decay for the parallel repetition of the GHZ game. This theorem was first proven by Holmgren and Raz, and we provide an alternate proof of the same theorem that we believe to be much simpler and more direct. Next, I'll give an overview of our proof. Consider the n-wise repetition of the GHZ game. In this, the players get inputs x, y, and z in f2 to the n drawn uniformly from the set of all x, y, z in f2 to the n cube such that x plus y plus z is equal to 0. And we also fix an optimal strategy for the players. So in this, each player has a function which takes their own input to their own output, and it is a function from f2 to the n to f2 to the n. Now, recall that we say that the players win the parallel repetition of the game if they win each copy of the game. So then we can write that the value of g at z to the power n equals the probability of winning the first coordinate and winning the second coordinate and so on up till winning the nth coordinate. By the chain rule, we can write this as the probability of winning the first coordinate times the probability of winning the second coordinate conditioned on winning the first coordinate and so on up till the probability of winning the nth coordinate conditioned on winning the first n minus 1 coordinates. The main idea is now to show for some parameter k and for every I in 1 to k that the probability of winning the ith coordinate conditional on winning the first I minus 1 coordinates is at most 0.99. Then the above expression gives us that the value of g at z to the n is at most 0.99 to the k. And if we can get this for k is equal to omega of log n, we get that the value of the n-fold repeated g at z game decays inverse polynomially. Okay, so now our task reduces to the following. We wish to show that for k is equal to omega of log n, and for every I in 1 to k, the probability of winning the ith coordinate, conditional on winning the first I minus 1 coordinates, is at most 0.99. The only problem seems to be that this event we are conditioning on of winning in the first I minus 1 coordinate seems very hard to analyze. But we observe the following. This event of winning in the first I minus 1 coordinates only depends on the questions and answers of the players in the first I minus 1 coordinates. And so, if we can show that a similar expression holds for every possible conditioning on the questions and answers of the players in the first I minus 1 coordinates, then we'll be done. And we also observe that any such conditioning determines a product event E is equal to E1 times E2 times E3. The reason for this is that the n tuple of answers for any given player depends only on the n tuple of questions for that player. So when we fix the questions and answers for a particular player in the first I minus 1 coordinates, essentially what it does is it restricts the set of possible questions to that particular player in coordinates I to n. Now, based on the above ideas, it is not too hard to show that the following lemma suffices to prove our main theorem. We show that for any sufficiently large product event, E is equal to E1 times E2 times E3, there exists a coordinate I in 1 to n such that the probability of winning the ith coordinate conditioned on the event E is at most 0.99. So essentially what this says is that some coordinate I is mildly hard when inputs are drawn uniformly from the set q to the n intersection with E. Note that the bound we get for our parallel repetition theorem depends on how large this product event E is. So for example, in our case, we can prove that such a lemma holds when the event E is at least inverse polynomially large, and this gives us an inverse polynomial decay for the GHZ game. If one can prove such a lemma for even smaller events, that would improve the bounds on the parallel repetition that we have. So I'll again also add that everything that I've said up till now is exactly the same as the techniques used for two-player parallel repetition. And our new contribution is the proof of this lemma, particularly for the GHG game. Okay, so now I'll talk about how we go about proving the lemma. So we fix any large product event, E is equal to E1 times E2 times E3. And now the players are getting inputs from the distribution, which we denote by P tilde, which is uniform over the set Q to the n intersection E, which equals the set of all x, y, z in F2 to the n cube, such that x plus y plus z is equal to 0, and x is in E1, y is in E2, and z is in E3. The main technical part of our proof is to approximate P tilde as a convex combination. P tilde is approximately equal to sum over j, alpha j dj, where each dj is hard in some sense. The approximation here is an L1 norm, and what we show is that such an approximation implies that a random coordinate I is mildly hard over P tilde, and this proves our main lemma. The proof of this part is fairly technical and uses Fourier analysis over affine subspaces of F2 to the n, and I will not go into the details of this in this talk. However, I will tell you about what our hard distributions are. So recall that in the n-wise repetition of the GHZ game, the players get inputs in the set q to the n, which is the set of all x, y, z in f2 to the n cube such that x plus y plus z is equal to 0. And now I'll define by what we call as the input graph for the players. It is a complete bipartite graph, each of whose vertex partitions contains 2 to the n vertices. So the first partition on the left corresponds to inputs to the first player, and the second partition corresponds to inputs to the second player. And for every input x for the first player and input y for the second player, the edge between them is labeled by z is equal to x plus y, which determines the corresponding input for the third player. And it is easy to see that there is a correspondence between the inputs to the n times repeated GHG game and the edges of this input graph. So choosing the player inputs for the n-wise repetition of the GHG game is essentially the same as first choosing a random edge from this graph and then giving the players the inputs corresponding to that random edge. An important observation in this graph is that the players can't win on all 4 edges of what we call a bow tie. So what is a bow tie? Just consider the graph on the right. A bow tie consists of 2 distinct inputs to player 1, which are denoted by x0 and x1, and 2 distinct inputs for player 2, which are denoted by y0 and y1. And we say that these comprise a bow tie if they satisfy the equation x0 plus x1 plus y0 plus y1 is equal to 0. And this addition is in f2 to the n. If such a condition holds, we define z0 to be x0 plus y0, which in such a case also equals x1 plus y1, and we define z1 to be equal to x1 plus y0, which also equals x0 plus y1. So observe that these 4 edges in this input graph essentially correspond to only 2 inputs for player 3, which are z0 and z1. And the main idea is that if you look at the 4 inputs corresponding to these 4 edges, which are x0, y0, z0, x0, y1, z1, x1, y0, z1, and x1, y1, z0, these look very similar to the inputs of the original GHZ game. So essentially, if you remove all the x's, y's, and z's, the subscript look exactly similar to the original inputs for the GHG game, which are 000, 011, 101, and 110. And they also satisfy similar additive properties. Now, using the fact that the value of the original GHG game was strictly less than 1, we can show that the players can't win on all the 4 edges of a bow tie. And using this, we define our heart distribution to be uniform over the edges of a bow tie. Okay, so now I'll just do a quick recap of everything I said. We wish to prove the main lemma, that is, for every sufficiently large product event E, there exists a coordinate I such that the probability of winning the ith coordinate condition on E is at most 0.99. And we define P tilde to be the uniform distribution over Q to the n intersection with this product event E. And we said that the main technical part was approximating P tilde as a convex combination, summation over J, alpha J dj, where each dj was a Hart distribution. Note that each such dj is uniform over some bow tie. And we can show that this implies that for a random coordinate I, the probability of winning the ith coordinate conditioned on the event E is at most 0.99. And in particular, this implies the existence of such a coordinate I. The proof of this technical part uses Fourier analysis over affine subspaces of f2 to the n. I would also like to add that most previous proofs of the main lemma make use of information theory, and we do not use information theory at all. In conclusion, we show that the value of the n-fold repeated GHG game decays inverse polynomially in n, and it is still open whether this rate of decay is exponential or not. Thank you all for listening.